do you want to say any more, Paul?
No. The floor is yours.
Brilliant. Okay, so I've called this the lockdown lowdown, in the hope that I can sort of shed some light on the crazy world that we're living in at the moment. If you're anything like me, you've probably spent a lot of your time in front of Zoom presentations, and you know, a lot of the ones that Paul's been doing have been great, focused mainly though on business and finances, and as it is needed, you know, as it is required. I've got a lot of people that are really struggling here. But one of the things that Paul wanted me to do was to really focus on the health side of this. So I've put this presentation together so that we can just have a little bit of a look at how you can improve your health and maintain your health through what looks like is going to be quite an extended period. I don't think there's any doubt that, you know, this isn't going to end anytime soon. So this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be looking at the C word, the COVID-19 word, the coronavirus word. I just want to unpick some of what's going on from my perspective, what I understand is going on and why things are happening in the way that they are, to help you hopefully to gain a little bit more knowledge, to help you and your loved ones to cope with, you know, probably what's coming up, not only for the next 3 weeks, but the next 3 months and probably, you know, the next year or so. We're going to look at vulnerability and why some people might be more vulnerable to COVID-19 than others, and in fact to any sort of dis-ease. We're going to look at how we can develop resilience. Why is it that some people are more resilient than others, for example? And then we're going to look at the fear picture. So what actually is going on, and how can we minimize the fear culture that we are all in at the moment? So what I'd like you to do first of all is I'd really like you to put your questions in the chat box, and Paul is going to just have a look at those for me in case I don't manage to cover any of these subjects. But so if you do have any questions, just drop them in the chat box. I want this to be a bit interactive. Oh yeah, we've got a guy. Who's that? Hi, who's that? Is that Nish?
Sorry, that was muted. Yeah, it's me.
It's very nice of you to join us. We were just speculating, and Shannon's here as well. So if you've got any questions, drop them in the chat box so that we can make sure we cover them. But first of all, what I'd like you to do is, can you give me a little bit of a wave if you or anybody you know has had the virus?
Oh, yeah.
Shannon and Margaret. Okay, so Margaret, you're unmuted. Do you want to just tell us a little bit, who is it that you know that's been affected and how have they been affected?
It's somebody that I used to network with, and I was told by our mutual friend that he was in hospital really poorly and they didn't know if he'd pull through. So that was a bit of a shock. And
how old is he?
46.
Oh God, so relatively
so quite young, but he is, how can I put this tactfully, he is very overweight, so that's probably a bit of an issue. And yeah, I messaged him on Facebook, so we've been talking on Facebook, and he just said he thought he was going to die. He said it was the most horrible experience.
Is he out now?
He's out now, he's at home, but they sent him home early. He got pneumonia, but they sent him home early because they need the beds. He was taken off the ventilator, and although he wasn't really, he normally wouldn't have been sent home that early, but they need, you know, the beds for somebody else. So he was sent home with strict instructions to take it easy. And he said, to be quite honest, he couldn't even walk the length of the room without having to stop and, you know, draw breath and, you know, take his time. He said he was just exhausted the whole time. So.
Thank you. And Shannon, who do you know?
It's my boyfriend's cousin and uncle. So they live in London. So obviously that's where a lot of people have been diagnosed. There's a lot of interaction in London, naturally. So yeah, they're just obviously echoing what Margot said. It's been quite a struggle.
Did they go into hospital?
Yeah. Sorry, say that again.
Did they go into hospital? Were they admitted?
Yeah, they've both been admitted. I think they're both still in hospital. but we know a lot of people as people. We know a lot of the frontline workers, and yeah, they are trying to get people through, do as much as they can.
Yeah,
but it's tough.
Brilliant. Okay, so what I want to do is just to really look at what's going on in terms of the truth out there about corona and COVID-19. So if you look at the scale where we know that there are people that get this and have no symptoms at all, to the other end of the scale where people die from it. Now, if we just compare this to the flu, we know that you can have the flu and like the COVID virus, you could have no symptoms whatsoever. You would be unaware of what's going on. But likewise, if you were in a vulnerable group, then you would die from it. The difference here is that is the sort of etiology of the difference between the COVID virus, which is an old SARS virus, and the flu. So the old SARS virus has been around many times before. It's been around, but it hasn't been around recently. So that means, unlike the flu, which tends to come back every year, we've not developed any resilience, we've not developed any antigens against this virus. So when you have the flu virus coming up every year, some people are vaccinated against it, but generally that vaccine is based on last year's flu. So it will provide a bit of support, but to about 10% of people, something like that, who really benefit from it. But it will provide some support because there are the antigens that the body will recognise when it gets the new dose of flu. Right, just give me a wave if you're keeping up with me. Cool. But with the COVID virus, it's much more, now just to say with the flu, it's actually quite difficult to catch, would you believe? It's not an easy thing that's passed on from one person to another. That's largely because these antigens are in your bloodstream, so when you pick it up within a couple of days, you're on your back, you're in bed, and you're not mixing with a load of people. This is different to COVID-19 virus, which takes maybe 7 to 10 days for it to appear in its ugliest form. So in this period, of course, 7 to 10 days, we will have been out and mixing with people, which is why they are putting us into lockdown to try and reduce this viral spread. It takes 7 to 10 days, because that's how long it takes for the immune system to develop the antigens, because these are new. These are new antigens, never seen this virus before, so it takes that while for the symptoms to come out. Because a symptom actually, I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, the cold is the cure. So what we tend to do is treat a symptom. If you've got a cold, you tend to take paracetamol and, anti-blocking agents and all the rest of it. Actually, the best thing to do is just to let that cold play itself out. In the same way that if you have eaten something, the best thing to do is to go and be sick, because that's the cure, it gets rid of it. Of course, with COVID, the disease itself and the symptoms itself are quite extreme in some cases. So what we are looking at here is the lockdown happening for two reasons. One, as who was it who said that you both said, actually, ladies, Shannon, and you both said, the NHS is overwhelmed, and therefore they are chucking people out as quickly as they possibly can. So we all know that everybody is being told to stay at home so that we reduce the spread, so that the NHS can cope. So we know that to be true. But the other thing that's really interesting about this, which I've learned fairly recently, which it kind of explains, I think, Shannon, you had a dad and a son, is that if you have people in the same household, so a father and son, and they both have the corona, their viral load will be twice as much as if there was only one person in the house. And that likewise goes, so if you've got 3 people and they're all in the house, all mixing together, each of them will have 3 times the viral load that they would have if they were just exposed to one person. So this explains why ordinarily, a disease like this, like flu, will just attack the elderly or the vulnerable. So we're seeing the vast majority of people are elderly and vulnerable who are dying from corona. But we're also seeing frontline healthcare workers, key workers, who are dying from this. So how does that happen? Why is it that young people are dying from this as well? And a lot of that is to do with viral load. So for example, if a nurse is in hospital, she has to be exposed to somebody for 15 minutes in order, so they say, to pick up that virus. But of course, she's in and out of various different rooms, particularly before they have the proper PPE, doctors as well. They were then picking the virus from this person, from another person down the road, from another person. And so their viral load was much greater. Do you get what I mean? Just wave if you get what I mean, please. And that's the best example of this is also the bus drivers. So yesterday we heard, can anybody remember, was it 14 bus drivers in London? Was it something like that? Anybody remember? 14 bus drivers have died. And that's because, of course, they're in the bus. They've got people on and off the bus. So every time somebody gets on the bus, if there's 40 people on the bus, there might only be one person with the coronavirus at the very early age. This would have happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. But the next lot that gets on the bus, there might be one person there, and then there might be one person in another bus load. So they have increased viral load, which is why a lot of younger people who are at the front line, which is why we need to protect those people with screens and so on, those are the people that are dying from corona. And that's why people are scared, because having been billed as something that affects just the vulnerable, we are now seeing what appears to be relatively healthy people dying. Does anybody have any questions about that? No?
Nothing so far.
Good. Okay, so let's move on to number 2, which is vulnerability. So what is it that makes these people vulnerable? Well, we know that when you are young and when you're very old, your immune system is fragile. So the minute you're born and before, you know, towards the end of your life, your immune system is fairly fragile. You get your immune system, a lot of it from your mother. So depending on the state of the mother, depends on how resilient you are as a baby. And very quickly you build up that resilience. But certainly we know that the elderly are very vulnerable, and we also know that people are vulnerable that have autoimmune diseases, maybe they've had treatment for cancer, any other sort of illness and disease, and that includes mental illness too. They will be in the vulnerable part. So what we need to be able to do is understand how to boost our immunity. How do we boost our immune system? So what I'd like to do is maybe Margot, I can see you've got your thing off. Have you been doing anything to boost your immune system over the last 2.5 weeks?
Eating well, eating healthily, getting out and getting some fresh air. Yeah, that's talking to people. Yeah, makes me feel better. Mental health. Yeah.
Nish, is there anything you've been doing?
Yeah, I've been keeping fit, so I've been going on runs, and then I've probably eating like, you know, my 5 a day every day. It's a lot easier now I'm at home. So, and also probably drinking a lot, which is sterilising my blood.
Yeah, very good.
Red wine's not part of your 5 a day, Nish.
It's made of grapes.
It's got resveratrol in it, so it's perfectly fine. A glass of wine a day and some dark chocolate. Margot, we talked about that earlier, didn't we?
Yeah.
Red wine and dark chocolate is allowed. Maybe not. So basically, I don't want to teach, you know, it's like teaching grandmas and suck eggs, but we do need to reiterate that drinking enough water is really important. Can you raise your hand for me if you are used to working from home, if your business is already home-based? So Helen and Nish, you presume then worked in an office before?
Yeah, I mean we're based in Burlington House on Wellingborough Road, but I mean, to be fair, I before that I used to work from home, so yeah, I'm kind of used to it. I think the bit I'm not used to is like just being stuck at home the whole time,
Yeah,
like everyone else.
yeah, working from home, being stuck at home is two different things. So
Yeah.
what I understood from a networking group, another one that I'm in of ladies, is that one of them was saying there's a lawyer, and she was saying that when she's at work, she drinks loads of water because she's got a water bottle on her desk. But now she's working from home, she realised that her habits had completely changed because this environment has changed. She actually went and got her water bottle from work and stuck it on her desk to remind her that she needed to drink as much water. So water is really important. Sleep is vital. Raise your hand if you're getting enough sleep. Yeah, so one or two of you. So how much is enough? What's really interesting is that studies have been done that say that if you only get 5 hours sleep a night rather than 8 hours sleep at night, you are 40% more likely to catch a cold. Now, basically, a cold is more similar to the coronavirus than flu is, because a cold is so easily transmitted. So sleep is also really, really important to prevent catching coronavirus, but also to overcoming it or being at this end of the scale where you don't get any symptoms rather than where you're, you end up in hospital. Sorry, what did you say? Oh, so, and what's really important about sleep, the other sleep study, I do a whole episode on sleep, is that if you've got people who are chronic sleepers, maybe they're only sleeping 5 hours a night, the markers for cancer cells in their body are 70% higher than anybody that gets regular sleep. So there's just two of the little facts that are really important about sleep. So having really good sleep hygiene is really important. Exercise, Nisha's already talked about, Helen talked about that as well, Margot talked about that. Eating really good food. One of the biggest things that I've seen as a real benefit is that I think more and more people during the last 2 weeks or so are cooking from fresh, they're spending more time making meals, not from packets and processed foods. And the great thing about that too, one of the great things about the Mediterranean diet, if you've heard about the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, it's not only about what you eat, it's the fact that the Mediterraneans eat as families. And they spend 2 hours sitting, eating all together. So Margaret was talking about the fact that, she'd had a family get together on Zoom with her children up in Edinburgh, and they all sat and ate virtually on Zoom. And it's really important that we not only connect, but connecting over food is a really powerful thing to do. Taking supplements is more vital than ever before. If you've never taken supplements before, now is the time to start, because we do know that the coronavirus, or like any virus, is helped by taking high doses of antioxidants, and particularly vitamin C. I take a high dose antioxidant drink every day that tastes like a coolie, so that I know even if I can't get access and out to get my fruits and vegetables every day, for some people that's not necessarily that easy to do, I know that I've got that supplementation in my body at all times. And I'm also making sure that I take supplements that alkalize my body, because viruses love to live in an acid environment. That's a whole new webinar. And finally, work and play. So we all have, if you look at Anthony Robbins talking about the 6 human needs, we need certainty in our lives and we need uncertainty, we need variety in our lives as well. So it's a bit like the kids that are at home, a lot of the parents, and thank goodness I don't have to do that, they are making sure that they have a certain element in the day where they're working with the children, doing homeschool with them, and that there's an element of play. But my question is, are you doing that for yourself? If you're furloughed, are you just playing all day but not having any structure? Or if you're working from home, maybe you've changed your business, you're upping your business, modifying it, like Paul and I were talking about. It's easy, isn't it, just to spend all day working? So Paul, what experience have you had of this?
In terms of?
How many hours you're working in the day compared to before? Are you managing to get that work-play balance?
It's probably about the same for me. This isn't unfamiliar territory, sort of working as I do. The only major difference for me is going out less to meetings. but pretty much, you know, I would work from home anyway, so it's not too different for me. I'm probably working less, in fairness.
Yeah. So Helen, what about you? Because this is very new for you, isn't it? You put your microphone on, Helen.
I'll unmute her, hold on. There you go, Helen.
Thank you. Well, I'm normally in the office, so I go to the office, so I'm usually there all day. I do find it difficult working at home because of the job entails. I mean, I have had to pop back to the office because I've had to pick up hardware and cables and bits and pieces, but most of the time I'm at home now.
And how are you managing your time at home?
Well, there's only myself and my husband here now. So my husband, he's in food logistics, so obviously he goes off very early. I've got into a routine now where I get up at 6:30. We have breakfast, and then I do yoga for half an hour on a YouTube, which I'm really loving.
Yes.
30 days of Adrian, she's great. I like the yoga anyway, so that's good. And then obviously I get dressed and then start work about 8:30. My husband comes home, we have a meal, and then we do have a walk around the block. So that's...
Sounds like then you've kind of fixed into a routine.
Yes.
The reason I'm asking is that because I haven't worked in an office for years, what I was hearing the other day was that, you know, those are they called water cooler moments?
Yes.
In offices where, you know, you get up and you go and get yourself a drink, or you go and make yourself a coffee, and you stand about and have a chat with your workmates for 20 minutes, whether it's about work or anything else, you're moving around. Those are the things that aren't happening. Those water cooler moments. This lady was saying to me that she's starting work at 9 o'clock, not finishing to 6:30. She's got small children. She's working way more hours physically, but also without breaks than she did before. So I think this is really important that we create, you know, just like you've done, Helen, and Paul's much more used to doing this because he's been working from home. But I do recognise it's particularly hard for people who are not used to this environment. Very good. Okay, so let's look at resilience. Now, increasing your immunity by doing all of those things is really important, obviously. But this really is the key. This next piece is the key to ultimate resilience. It's pieces of work that have been out in the public eye for probably 5 to 6 years. Scientists have been working on it for probably 10 years. The best doctors and naturopathic doctors have known about this for a long time, because 90% of your health and your immunity lies in your microbiome. So raise your hand if you've heard of the microbiome, please. Oh, nobody. Okay, so you have. Who said that?
Shannon.
Oh, Shannon, I haven't got anyone pick on my picture for some reason. I don't quite know why.
Heather, I have.
I am a nutritional therapist though, so...
Oh, okay. There you go. So Shannon should know about it. So your microbiome, so the best way of describing this is that we are made up, on us and in us, up our nose, on our skin, in our guts. We are made up of trillions of different bacteria, fungi, and it's this kind of ecosystem. It's a bit like a rainforest. So we act like a rainforest. And we used to think that it was genetics that would drive whether or not we became ill. So, you know, my mum had it, so therefore I'm going to have it. It was about a lot of it was to do with your mindset or whatever. But we now know that 90% of your health is driven by having a healthy microbiome. So the way to describe this is, I don't know if you've heard of Yellowstone. Have you heard of Yellowstone Park? Have anybody been to Yellowstone Park? I have, very fortunate. So a few years ago, many years ago in Yellowstone Park, they decided that they were going to get rid of the wolves in Yellowstone Park because they were, you know, nasty creatures, and they decided they were going to get rid of them. So they culled all the wolves. The trouble with that was that the moose, who would be preyed on by the wolves, were much more proliferated. So the company grew, and they used to eat all of the flora and fauna and trees next to the riverbeds. This had a knock-on effect in that because that wasn't there, the beaver population went down, and also the bird population went down. And the whole ecosystem of the Yellowstone Park completely changed. They reintroduced wolves several years later, and over a period of years, and it did take years, the ecosystem restored itself and back to balance. Raise your hand if you're with me here and you understand what I'm getting at. So our bodies are exactly the same, is that we have this finely balanced ecosystem, and the better we have this wonderful balance of wolves and beavers and birds and plants effectively in our bodies, the more we are resistant to dis-ease. There's a huge link between the gut and the brain, the gut-brain axis, which Shannon will know all about, and that has a massive knock-on effect too to our brain health. So resetting your microbiome, I have a 21-day microbiome reset program. I don't have time to talk about it here, but this is the most important thing to do. It's really interesting to see what will happen to the populations around the world who have much more healthy and diverse microbiomes. Because in the West here, because of the way that we eat, and America is a particularly bad example for this, they eat an awful lot of processed foods. The variety and biodiversity in their microbiomes is really poor. But if you go to somewhere like Africa, for example, the variety of foods that they eat, their exposure to natural microbiomes and fungi and bacteria and viruses in the soil is much higher. So they will have, they should have a higher resilience. There's a wonderful book called The Plant Paradox by a guy called Dr. Stephen Gundry, if you're interested in reading more on that subject. There are loads of other subjects as well. So making sure that you're not only eating well, like Margot was talking about, but having a variety of different things. I don't know whether it's just me, but I would, particularly when the kids were younger, I'd have kind of 12, most of us have 12 meals that we rotate, oh, I'll just do that for supper because it's easy, we don't have to think about it. But actually going out there and introducing particularly new vegetables into your diet and keeping some of those in increases the range of these microbiome, different makeup of your microbiome, and would improve your immunity. Doing things like drinking kefir, kombucha, fermented foods, taking probiotics and prebiotics, at the very least is something that you should consider doing. Does anybody do any of those things apart from Shannon? I know that Shannon will because she's a nutritional therapist, so she should. So let's just have a check-in with you. So Heather, can you put your, can you unmute Heather? Heather?
Yeah, I mainly just take probiotics. Yeah, and try and eat healthy, a lot of vegetables.
Yes.
That's mainly an exercise.
So Margot, inulin is a prebiotic. Yeah, so inulin is really good. And it is indeed a prebiotic. So a lot of the system that we use has inulin in it, in particularly in forms of broccoli powder. So yes, inulin is a prebiotic, and you need a prebiotic in order to make a probiotic work. So a lot of us go and kind of just buy supplements from Boots or other high street stores, which shall remain nameless, thinking that we're doing the right thing, but actually it's a bit like at the moment you're going to financial advisors for financial advice, you're going to lawyers for your your law advice. You really should be going to nutritional therapists to get advice at this time, because I don't know about you, but at no other time has health been more important. Can you raise your hand if you agree with me, please? What I'm hearing at the moment is that people are going to accountants and lawyers, but when they get there, they are talking about their health and their well-being and that of their family. Yes, they know that their financial system is dodgy, but actually they've realised, like so many of us, that you cannot buy health. So, finally, let's look at this piece here. So we're going to talk about fear. One of the big problems that we have is that we're being fed all of this information and misinformation at the moment, and scare tactics in order to hopefully keep us in our houses. And, you know, that's fine. Because some of us need to be told what to do. But actually there is a fine line, isn't there? I don't know if you agree with me, between actually living in that fear state that is realistic and one that actually is reality. And so it's really about managing your energy every day. And I don't know about you, but I limit the amount of exposure that I have to the news. Does anybody else do that? Yeah, so I'm not looking at it more than once a day, and sometimes I don't even do that. And I'm also making sure that I'm getting my information from good sources, but also that I'm not thinking about what's going to happen in 2 months' time. The what if scenario is very scary for the body. We are in heightened sense of anxiety. Even if you think, I've got this, I'm perfectly fine, I've got used to it, I'm going to be okay. Actually, because we are in this scenario at the moment, we all have a heightened sense of fear or a heightened anxiety going on. This is increasing our fear hormones, testosterone, cortisol and adrenaline. So we were not meant to have long-term doses of adrenaline and cortisol in our bodies. You know, if you look at ancestrally, the only thing that we were ever frightened of was something like a saber-toothed tiger. So we'd be out, you know, particularly Nish and Paul, you'd be out hunting and gathering for us ladies. And the worst thing that could happen to you was being hunted by a saber-toothed tiger. The fear would happen, adrenaline and cortisol would come into your body, flood your body, it would empty everything from anything other than your legs, which would make you run out of the way as fast as you possibly could. As soon as that fear was over, you would return to normal. Ladies, of course, we were meant to be sitting at home, tending the fire and the children. And so we react to fear and anxiety in a very different way. And we tend not to be able to get rid of adrenaline and cortisol out of our systems in the same way. They tend to keep in the systems for longer, which is why we get so much hormone disruption. I'm a menopause specialist, so I'm really fascinated by the disruption of stress on our hormone levels. So what's going on at the moment is, whether you feel it or not, you will be in a heightened state of fear. So we need to be able to manage that. That's the real job, increasing your immunity, sorting out your microbiome by what you eat and how, you know, your daily habits. And then looking at the other piece, which is, I don't know whether you want to call it the spiritual bit of it, you know, Helen does her yoga, finding a practice every day that brings in this sense of peace. So I'm quickly going to talk to you about one of a semi-essential amino acid called nitric oxide. So this was discovered in 1992. It was awarded a Nobel Prize. And oxytocin, which is another amino acid, actually is a precursor of nitric oxide. And the reason I'm talking about this is because oxytocin relaxes your blood vessels. And studies are now showing that, particularly if we give the gas nitric oxide, is that it can counteract the effect of COVID-19. If you can imagine, your blood vessels look like the one on the left here when they are constricted, when you're trying to breathe. So the more you can open your blood vessels, the more you can relax. It's a bit like having an asthma attack. The more you're in a state where you've got lots of nitric oxide in your system so that your vessels are opening, the more chance you have of either preventing COVID or not suffering so badly with it. Can you raise your hand if you're with me, please? Good. So where do we get oxytocin from? I take it from a L-arginine supplement. Wouldn't be without it. But there's other things that you can do to increase your oxytocin levels. Having sex, making love, doing whatever you do with whoever you want to do it, that improves your oxytocin levels. It increases that feel-good hormone. Having pets around, so this is really important. This is no joke. We know that people take pets into old people's homes, and that I've got a dog, and this is a big comfort to us here, having the dog around. And it's a scientific reaction that we have to stroking our animals. Oxytocin is the substance we produce when we have a child. So as a woman, you know, if you're breastfeeding or when you have a baby, oxytocin is the same substance that we produce. Deep breathing. So does anybody else other than Helen do any deep breathing? Shannon, I can't see you. So Sue does it.
Yes, I do.
Shannon does it, yeah.
Shannon does it. Nish, do you do any breathing exercises of any sort apart from when you're running?
No, I just rely on that.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, so you know, there's a huge. I don't know if you heard the Queen talking, whatever day it was. I've no idea what the day is today. But when she did her speech, she actually related to prayer and meditation. Now, can you imagine? You know, even 5 years ago, the Queen even mentioning the word meditation. Because now we understand how important it is that quietening the mind actually increases levels of oxytocin, nitric oxide, and improves our immune system, which is why I'm showing you this slide. Now, for you, Nish, your meditation is probably done when you're running.
Okay. Yep.
Helen, you're doing it when you do your yoga. Mm-hmm. Margot, what would you say your meditation was? So it could be reading, walking. What is your meditation? You need to turn your...
She's on.
Yeah, I'm on. I don't really.
You don't really.
I've got to do something. I need to. Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to find a way. So I'm doing online Pilates at the moment, and I say to most of them are ladies that do it. Actually, this next hour is more like a meditation for you, because whilst you're with me for this hour, you are in a meditation journey, even though we're moving, because you're concentrating on my voice and your movements and your breathing. Actually, this is effectively a led meditation. So it doesn't matter which way you do it. You don't have to be sitting in a room with your legs crossed going on. A meditation can take forms in all sorts of ways. Shannon, do you hesitate? Do you meditate or do anything?
Yes, so for me, I read a lot, but I also have a few apps that I follow. So Headspace is a really good app, and they have guided meditations, whether it's like focused breathing or just kind of getting to know your body. So yeah, there's some really good apps for meditation.
Loads on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, just put meditation into YouTube. There are wonderful sleep meditations. There are meditations for giving up smoking, losing weight, you know, anything and everything. And I've actually done some meditations myself. So here we are. We really need to make sure then that we are keeping in touch with the truth, but not going into overwhelm. Making sure that we take each day at a time, even each hour at a time is okay. Worrying about what's going to happen in the future actually is very stressful and keeps us in that stress response for too long. And that in itself, stress is the biggest cause of any dis-ease, in my opinion. Doesn't matter what it is, stress is the major cause. And we have an epidemic in the 21st century because we live stressful lives. Finding ways to boost your immunity, whether it's through food or habits. Looking at your microbiome and how you can reset that or nourish it. And finally, managing your state, increasing the positive energies. So whether that's with doing exercise, positive things like meditations, bringing people around you that fill you up rather than pull you down. And this is one of the things that Paul's so great at, is he's created this community. I mean, other communities as well. I'm posting music onto other platforms. You know, it's happened like never before. I've joined Gareth Malone's choir. We are in a wonderful opportunity now to create this community and collaboration. And this is actually what builds us up, because we need to feel that we have love and connection in order for us to live a healthy life. We need to feel that we're significant in some ways, that we are making a difference to other people. We need to find some way to grow every day. So whether it's going on to webinars, learning a new skill, taking up an old skill that you did, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we have some form of certainty, even if it's not long-term certainty, some certainty that even if it's just today, this is what I'm going to achieve. And we also need to make sure that there is variety in our lives too, because that's what's going to keep us healthy and safe, and as you know, in as much as a good position as we can be when we come out of this, when we are inevitably going to be affected by the corona. So, thank you very much. Thanks, Paul, for inviting me. I'm aware that we've done our 45 minutes. I am going to stay on. If you want to go, that's fine. But if anybody would like to stay on and just ask me some questions, I'm conscious that we've kind of done our allotted time. But I am here to answer any more questions.
Okay. Margaret, you had a question about inulin. Do you want to ask that one now?
What's the amount that that I should be taking an inulin every day?
Well, you can get inulin from food. So amounts are tricky. I don't hold amounts in my brain. What I do is I take supplements which are developed by a company where the scientists organise all of that. So, for example, I take a probiotic supplement which has prebiotic in it. If I'm going on to my microbiome reset program, then I know that for that 21 days, for the middle 7 days, I'm boosting my inulin levels to support my system. But I couldn't tell you, maybe Shannon could, but I couldn't tell you an amount of inulin. I mean, we're all very different. But the thing is that if you are eating a diet that has a variety of fruits and vegetables, and particularly vegetables, particularly things like onions, garlic, leeks, those are the things, broccoli, those are the things with inulin in, if you're eating high levels amount of those, then that should be sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions or comments for Gill while she's here and live?
Not a question, but definitely a comment. Thank you for that. I really enjoyed that. I really liked your example of the ecosystem. I thought that was really nice. It's really easy for everyone to kind of understand and appreciate and kind of get their heads around. Sometimes when you start talking about like nutritional therapy and especially the microbiome, some people can really turn off. But I thought that was a really great example. So thank you.
Using my speaking skills, telling stories is the most powerful way to get messages across.
Yeah. I like to...
Sorry.
Go on, Helen, say again.
I'd just like to say it's very interesting, thank you, because I'm interested in that all. Very informative, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Margot?
Yeah, I've got a question. I can't seem to sleep any more than 4 or 5 hours a night. It doesn't matter what time I go to bed, my body wakes up after about 4 or 5 hours. Is there anything I can do to sleep 8 hours? I'd love to be able to, but I wake up and I feel ready to get up.
More Gill?
It's a question. We tend to need less sleep as we get older, certainly.
No offence, Margot.
No, I'm only joking.
I bet you're not as old as me, by the way. But there are a number of factors. So it's about having the right balance of things in the body. So, for example, magnesium is a really important thing to be able to have sufficient amount of sleep. So there are sort of 4 elements that we need: magnesium, calcium, and phosphorus. And anyway, magnesium is very limited in our diet nowadays. 85% of us are lacking in magnesium because it's no longer in the soil, because we don't treat our soils very well, unless even if we're eating organic food, to be honest, it's very lacking. Now, magnesium is very high potency in the body first thing in the morning, but as the day goes on, the magnesium sources deplete. So this is why you'll get people having things like restless leg syndromes. Raise your hand if you've heard of that. Ladies,
I've got it. I have it.
Yeah, restless legs. So that's a big sign. Restless leg syndrome, migraines, constipation, cramp. I don't know if Nisha gets cramp. Those are all
no, I don't.
Flashing red signs that your magnesium levels are low. So supplementing with a good quality magnesium, you can by all means, get in contact with me and I'll tell you the one that I use. Magnesium is really important because it is a relaxant, but it only must be taken before you go to bed. The other thing is that, I don't know how old you are, but the majority of women, as we are going beyond about 39, 40, our estrogen levels are dropping. And actually the lack of estrogen has the most major effect on everything, including sleep. So I've just been in many, many years of chronic sleep, completely trying to ignore the fact that I didn't want to take any HRT or natural estrogen. got to the stage where it was just beyond a joke. And since I've been taking very low dose transdermal estrogen, then I sleep like a baby, and it's the first time that I've done that for about 12 years.
Okay.
So if you want to contact me about that, we can have a discussion about that. Just I'm really interested in menopause, not only natural solutions, but actually how the world has moved on in terms of safe ways. I'll just give you one thing to ponder on, and Shannon, you know, you might be interested in this. You know, the best age, actually I'm going to ask you ladies, because we've got most ladies on here. Oh, guys can have a guess as well. What's the best age physiologically for a woman to have a baby? Anybody want to guess?
30.
14.
Sorry?
14.
14. What did you say, Paul?
42.
42.
Oh,
Not physically
30.
or emotionally.
25.
20.
20, 25.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say 20s.
Yeah. So the actual age is 18.
Oh, that's close.
Physiologically, the best age for a girl to have a baby is 18. Because although our world has changed over centuries and millennium, our bodies haven't massively. It takes a long, long time for us to develop. And in the same way, we would go into the menopause 150 years ago at the age of about 56, 57, and then we would die at the age of 59, for example. So that's only 2 years that you're without lacking of estrogen. Nowadays, the average age for a woman through menopause is 51, but we might be living until we're 81 or even 91. So this is a long time for us to be without the beneficial effects of estrogen on our body. And that's why finding safe forms, and I'm a bit of a convert to this because I was a bit resistant. I was in the age where, you know, it was dangerous to take it. I've done my research now, and actually I understand that like we replace magnesium, it's really important to consider replacing estrogen because it feeds so many of our systems, not less cognitive function.
Wow. Thank you very much. Anybody else, or shall we call it a day?
Very good. Niche, microbiome reset is really important for sports performance as well. I just want to say that.
Okay, yeah, I'll look into it. Thank you.
Go to my website, guys, www.drgillbarham, Jill with a G.com, and there's both blogs and stuff that you can read for free. And
Yeah, I've shared the link in the chat room. You can download the chat by clicking on the 3 dots and putting save chat. I also put a link in there for the book that Jill mentioned, The Plant Paradox. So if you want to access that, save the chat before we click all the buttons and you go.
thanks for joining.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Very interesting and very informative. So, and we've got about a dozen people on Facebook Live. So
Yeah, cool.
that sort of popped in and out. So great.
Okay.
Okay, have a nice weekend. Have a lovely Easter.
Thanks, you too.
Make sure
Thank
you
you.
do well, get some exercise.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you.
People are working out how to get rid of themselves. You're here all night now, Jill. Helen, you can't get off, can you? Shall I bounce you off?
Water.
Oh, just water, is it? Sorry.
Yeah,
My
but
mistake.
it's not quite 1 o'clock yet.
Yeah. I'll call back in about 3 hours. Might not be water then, will it? See you later.
Bye.
Ta-ra.
Bye.
Very good. You covered a hell of a lot there, Jill. So I think.
I'm blind as well, really, but
no, it's good stuff. It's good stuff, and to do it as you did it in a just the style really worked. I think it wasn't overload, and I think it was as Shannon touched on, the way you created a story for it to visualize it, I think was great.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important about these Zoom things, because I see so many people putting slides up with loads of words on, and you're sitting thinking, oh my God, when is this going to end? And also making sure that people are listening, because they will turn off, because I do it, they turn the screen off, or they're looking at their phones or whatever, but if they think, oh, she might ask me in a minute.
Yeah, so that was good. I think that's you've done that the most, actually.
Yeah, you get more engagement. We could do a little, we could do a session on this if you want. We could do a little teaching session on running Zoom calls and things.
Yeah, I've got someone lined up for that, actually. A lady, Sue Garner, that offered, but I'm waiting for her to get back to me. She said she's been offered she's a trainer, that's what she tends to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's not doing any physical training at the moment, but she's been offered something to do some virtual stuff. So she's exploring that at the moment. So I'm going to give her first dibs
Yeah.
at that because she offered. But if she doesn't come up with the goods, I'll come back to you if that's all right.
Have you seen her presentations?
She did a workshop for me last year on presentation skills, which was very well received. I didn't sit in on that,
Yeah.
but that was very well received. And she's also prepared something for effectively doing Zoom calls. So I don't know what it's like. I've not seen her on a Zoom call or do one. So yeah, but she was putting together.
Because every day's a school day.
Yeah, I know. It's always stuff to learn. So yeah, so watch this space. And I was going to say to you, can't remember. Popped into me, popped back out again. So I, as you probably know, will sort of edit this a little bit, and then I stick it on Facebook and stick it on the website, so it's there as well for people to access. And no, I think it was good stuff. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I've shared it into, there's a guy called Stephen Green, actually.
Okay.
Green's a millionaire property investor, and he runs a group called the Mighty Red Car in Redcar, so it's north of here. I've been teaching live Pilates for them on a Tuesday, and I said, oh, can I share this? And they said, oh, yes, please do. So I'll create a watch party. They've got 11,000 people watching.
Perfect.
And he's going to be on television on 9 o'clock on Sunday night. It's something about families swapping houses.
Oh yeah, I've seen those sort of things before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't tend to watch much reality TV. It drives me nuts. But
no, it's not something I would normally watch either. But I might record and watch that one just because he's on it.
Because he's on it, yeah. If you know someone, it makes a difference. But
yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
The rest of it is trash, I think. Right. Okay. Thanks ever so much, Jill. I'll see you online at some point in the future, no doubt.
Have a